Hello and good day, Welcome to the Super Good Camping. Welcome to the Super Super
Start
Good.
again.
Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. My name is Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com in another of our non-celebrity regular people doing interesting things episode. Today we're chatting with Tim's pal from the West Coast, Diana, and her partner, Andre. We'll be following their journey in planning and executing and budgeting and planning for medical things and doing epic trips from beginning to end. So today we're going to touch on some more about budgeting.
All right. Tell me how you guys go about budgeting for a trip. So things like what's good gear to invest in. How do you put a chunk of money aside for an airplane because you guys do stuff elsewhere? I do stuff relatively in my backyard. You guys don't. How do you go about? How do you juggle the money? How do you make that? How do you make decisions about where best to place that money?
I'll start off. So
Cool.
in terms of budgeting, we actually typically don't have a specific budget when we prepare for trips. We don't really think about it. We kind of have this kind of unspoken guiding principle to be frugal wherever we can be. And so that, comes in like in things like buying bulk food when we can. So if we're able to buy a bit more and like spread it out throughout multiple trips, that makes things like easier. Going to a place like Bulk Barn, taking advantage of sales when it's available for camping food. I think our best optimizing tip is to combine trips with other opportunities. So typically we like to tack on adventures to other places that we're going. So, if we're already going out, to the East Coast or to another country like Hawaii for a wedding, we'll always try to tack on like a little bit of time and flex a bit of our vacation availability to be able to go for a hike, go for a trip so that it's not just for this one. So we really try to maximize every opportunity.
Bang for your buck.
Absolutely. There's also, anytime we can have a cheaper stay, that is definitely a priority. We are not the folk to stay in our, in our campsite or a hotel or a hostel ever. So we're always trying to kind of maximize, we just need sleep and then that's it and like move on. And we also do a lot of like monitoring flights. So trying to keep like constantly on the ball if there's good days to purchase or shifting our schedules a little bit just to accommodate better savings. So we're always very cognizant of it, but I wouldn't say that, we have like an Excel spreadsheet for budgeting. We're always just kind of back of our mind trying to make it as efficient as possible for things.
Cool.
And yeah, and then like because of that frugalness, we like to take that as like an advantage to be able to like splash out where we can. So if it means like, we camp a lot, but then we get to spend money on a really, really cool excursion where we otherwise might not want to, or like renting a car because we need to go, travel really far and a car is very, very expensive. We're always trying to like do an offset in other ways. And then also buying good quality equipment. So, part of having that balance is rather than constantly buying the like crappy, equipment over and over, we like to just buy something once really, really well, and maximize on the use of it. Just the life of it is way more, and we end up saving so much money.
Yeah, I think there's some things that are worth investing in and others that you can maybe skip out a bit. So, for example, some of the things we've really put our money into getting something nice is things like hiking boots, which are really important for your foot health, right? If your foot isn't healthy, you're going to have a bad time. And those are things that can really last you a long time if you buy something that's well made, right?
Yeah,
I think
well,
the other
blowing an ankle out while you're doing a hike is really poopy. So if you've got good
I
hiking
mean,
boots, right?
yeah, like you just purchased new boots like a week ago. It's been striding around with fresh boots all over the
Breaking them
house.
in.
Yeah, gotta break them in, yeah. And that was, a decision to buy something that I think is gonna one be more comfortable. My other boots weren't as comfortable, and hopefully something that's gonna last me a long time as well. It was worth it to spend the money.
Absolutely.
Cool.
because I remember the last few hikes you were suffering so much with
Mhm.
band-aids and like wrapping your feet, buying double lined socks, like just going through all these different combinations to have the boots work. Where I mean, in our next trip, we're going to New Zealand in a few weeks. I mean, we're going to be doing so much walking, so it's really, that's such a huge investment, so you're not suffering the entire time.
Yeah, good call.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, I mean, we usually like, it really is a balancing act. I think we cheap out wherever we feel we're comfortable cheaping out on, and then splurge on like activities and, you know, food and experiences. And then we end up just spending like a very balanced amount. I don't think we ever really strain ourselves too much, because, you know, even in Hawaii, it's such an expensive country, and all the food and everything there is so expensive. So we were just camping on the beaches as much as possible, and all campsites are either free or like $10 or $30 for a stay. And then, you know, waking up on beaches, and it was amazing. And then we were comfortable spending money on expensive like meals or fruits and whatever else, and going on excursions.
Mhm.
Yeah, to go, I would think, you know, go out and do a spearfishing day, because that'd be a really cool experience, right? So
Mm.
if it's because I dragged a tent and I spent a bunch of time on the beach, which is cool because I wake up and look at a sunrise or look at a sunset.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's terrible as well. Yeah, that's a great way to approach it. I think that's awesome, because I don't
We
think the
had
hotel really needs my money, or I don't need to give the hotel my money. So
Absolutely not. There was actually, when we were in Hawaii, we finished our hike a day early, and we had nowhere to stay. So we were just driving around trying to Google where we could sleep for free or like for really, really cheap. And one of the locals recommended some beach that people camp at all the time. They're like, oh, they don't check, no one will find you, no one will do anything. And we showed up there in the middle of the night and just like slept on the beach. And in the like first thing in the morning was like 5 a.m. Oh, there was chickens everywhere in the trees, and just screaming like through the morning. Roosters all over the place, just like jumping down all over us. It was so hectic. I mean, free, but you know, it's like that's the balance. Like it's
free with
free,
a
but it's
price.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But cool
exactly.
experience. That's something you're going to remember for a long, long time. So not
Absolutely.
necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think the other benefit of a lot of outdoors activities is that it's usually free, right? Going hiking to a mountain or going canoeing on a lake, most of the time that activity is free, right? So we like to balance the fact that we can do those activities for free with some maybe more exciting excursions or activities that might have a charge for, but you're really, again, balancing those two things out.
Exactly. That's true.
Cool. I like that. Camping's getting crazy expensive here in Ontario. So to just do the camping things, especially some of the backcountry stuff is actually more expensive than front country now, because they're like, well, but you can bring 9 people. Maybe you're missing the point of backcountry camping, because I don't want 8 other people on the site with me. I'm trying to get
Eight's too
away
many
from
people.
people.
Exactly.
Oh
Yeah, it's
man.
definitely a challenge in Ontario. I find that here out in BC, it's been a lot easier for us to find free camping, because there's a lot more logging roads and just generally a lot more camping, I guess, culture out west. So we are finding that we're actually able to go camping so much more frequently and for free. We haven't really had to think about booking campsites recently, except for some really nice ones. But I mean, even that is so much cheaper than I find in Ontario. I find it actually pretty expensive in Ontario in comparison.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I can tell you from my pocketbook, I agree.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep, it is. Okay, cool. Talk to me about how, because you guys do different things, how do you deal with, my Googles thinks I'm talking to it, just saying, um in the background, wacko. How do you guys deal with, first aid? How do you deal with healthcare, which I assume has to involve some kind of insurance, because here in Ontario it's OHIP. I don't know what it's called in BC HIP, whatever.
Be
BKIP. So I don't know. How did you? Because it's a different gig, how do you plan it? And is it different whether you're jumping across the border and doing Washington or doing Hawaii or doing New Zealand? Like, how does that all play out for you?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think first aid and safety, there's a few things to consider. The first is where you're going, right? So I think that does play a factor into what we're bringing with us, what we're preparing for, and how we prepare. As a basic for all hikes or kind of outdoor excursions, we always have a first aid kit with us.
Good for you.
Um,
Second
yeah.
time I'm hearing about this.
And that includes a lot of basics like band-aids and triangle straps, a emergency blanket, things that will really help out in an emergency situation. Um, so that's always important to have, and we even try to bring that down to what we think is the minimum we need. So to balance with weight, right, which is always important when you're backpacking.
Yep.
We put it into a Ziploc bag, which is lighter than what the first aid kit bag came in, right? We were trying to cut down everywhere we can, but still bring that essential tools we need to stay safe.
Yeah, and for the first aid kits, I've also read a lot with first aid kits. It's important to actually build one yourself because then you know exactly what's in it and what you're going to use and everything. So, like purchasing a first aid kit and then having it sit, like just arbitrarily purchasing one and having it in your bag is a lot less useful than if you put something together yourself because you're very knowingly placing certain things you think you would need. Where, yeah, when you just buy a first aid kit, you have no idea what's in there. You get injured and you're just like, what am I
Where's
supposed
the
to do with
stuff?
it?
I don't know what a thing.
Yeah.
Ah.
What stuff
Yep.
do I need? I don't even know what I need. So yeah, that's definitely a really good thing to consider with first aid kits.
Cool. I
Yeah,
hadn't
I
thought
would
about that.
say
I've restocked first aid kits, but I don't think I've built one from zero. I mean, I know mine now, but I've had it for 15 years. So I'd be stupid if I didn't know it by now. But yeah, no, that's a great point. Wow.
Or you'd be very lucky to know what's in your first aid kit because you've never had to use it.
Well, that's true. But I'm a stumbling old guy, so I've used stuff in my first aid kit plenty, not to worry.
some other things we bring, and these again are all things in case of an emergency, right? So one that we always have with us is a Garmin InReach device, which allows us to call for help when needed. It also allows us to send our location and updates to family members or people who we tell about our trips. So that lets them know that we're safe. And if we don't check in for a while or a few days, that lets them know that we're not safe.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a good device to have on you if you're going into the backcountry.
Excellent. So, okay. So then tell me about covering your butt for insurance and stuff, because, here in Canada, it's theoretically, before Doug Ford destroys it, it's not an issue, right? We're covered. Not so much where you guys go off and do stuff. So how do you go about planning that?
I mean, we don't. We're not very good at that. We do have insurance already with our credit card, so there's that kind of base travel insurance that we more or less rely on. But we also recently got the Amex. This is going to be like a placement ad, but a plug-in.
Okay,
We
cool.
got the American Express Cobalt credit card, and it's honestly, Andre did so much research on different credit cards, and it has really good benefits. So we ended up getting that one, and they actually have pretty good travel medical insurance on it. So we once again don't have crazy details on it because we just happen to have it, but that is probably the extent. I mean, we definitely do rely more on our safety equipment and making sure that we have everything we need and we're safe to even avoid having to use travel insurance. But obviously accidents happen, so we do have that as on the back burner, but I don't think it's a primary kind of thing that we think through or check before we go traveling. So we should probably be a bit more cognizant on that. Well, we're not at the moment.
All right. So being an old guy that's a dad, I won't scold you, but I will do some research on it, because if for nothing else, the two most recent things that I've heard in the news. A gentleman had a heart attack while he was on the wrong side of the border, and because he made a mistake on the paperwork, they aren't covering him. So there's $26,000 bill because his insurance would have covered it had there not been the small mistake. Okay. And I've also read a story recently about an extraction that had to happen. It was hikers got caught, they down trees, wiped them out, all kinds of bad things, the stuff that you don't want to think about before you go hiking. And that extraction again was around $25,000 or $30,000, and they weren't covered. So it's out of pocket. It's like, oh crap. So I mean, and it's not through any fault of their own, but nonetheless, it's like that we don't do it for free. We'll come save your butt. You got to pay us. Okay. Wow.
There was when we were on the West Coast Trail, we had met some people that were hiking in a group, and I believe it was the daughter who broke her ankle, like the first 5-10 kilometers of the West Coast Trail, and they had to, I don't know if it was evacuated out or if they just evacuated themselves out.
I think they had to get a boat to get her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. Like that's West Coast Trail that everyone's doing very regularly
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, they just that's crazy. It's definitely not something you ever want to think about or consider because you just hope it never happens. But definitely, if it happens, it's quite bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing, as well for like safety, I'm just thinking of bear spray is a really big one. Now that we're out in BC, bear spray is very much like a bare minimum. And even when we don't have it and the bears are hibernating, I'm still asking Andre where the bear spray is, just in case if one of them wakes up early. That is like such a huge realistic fear now. And the other one, which I find very important, people need to recognize, is sunscreen and sun protection is super important. I had one time where it was one of the first times I was hiking. It's a classic Diana tale. I was hiking for the first time in snowy conditions with clouds everywhere. I didn't put on sunscreen or have sunglasses, and I got second-degree burns on my entire face, and it was awful and could have absolutely been avoided if I had sun protection. So now I am #1 proponent of SPF.
All right, cool. Yeah, and hats and stuff like that. Anything that you're out there plugging away. Very quick question before we get into, because I really want to hear about Epic hiking through Brazil. What do you guys do? How do you deal with water? So for me, because I'm in a canoe and I'm on water, all I need to have is a filter or some pills or whatever. What do you're up in the mountains where not on water? How does that play out for that? Like, I'm just curious. What do you lug tons of heavy water, or what do you do?
Depends a lot on the hike for sure. Usually you have to plan for that. So when we're researching into certain hikes, reading what other people have done when they've done the hike, or reading through All Trails comments or reviews, people will usually talk about, there's a water source here, there's a water source there, or there aren't water sources for this period of time. So make sure you fill up. That's something that you have to plan out. Usually by looking at a map, you can usually see where there's major streams or rivers or lakes, but sometimes it's not very clear. So doing research beforehand, knowing where your water sources are or aren't, is very important to plan.
Yeah, there's sometimes where there are water streams, and then we'll read on All Trails, and somebody has gone on that trail a week ago, and they say, the stream actually dried out. Don't even count on it. So sometimes, looking on a map, it might seem like there's water sources, but there have been occasions where things have dried out. And I mean, that is a completely different route because especially when you're hiking, you're going through so much water that it's very easy to go through several liters very, very quickly. Especially when we were in Hawaii, we were going through so much water and we were filling up liters and liters regularly, and just like going through so much water was crazy.
And will you use some kind of filtration system, or will you just drink it from the stream?
Yeah, we use it's a Sawyer. I think it's called a
Yep.
Sawyer one. yeah, you have a bag on one side, you fill it up and you squeeze it through, kind of like a life straw situation.
Yep.
And you just squeeze them out. But yeah, we usually have a bladder with us at all times, and then 1 to 2 water bottles, but we always have like a big bladder on us at all times. It's like the bare minimum.
Yeah. No, good call. Good, just cool because I don't hike because I'm old and crippled and stuff. So
But you have insurance, so it's fine.
Will you train for specific destinations like your New Zealand trip, or do you have to do some kind of preparation for being physically up to that?
I would say depending on how extensive the hike is, for Assiniboine, we definitely did train a bit more and prepped with weight and just long distance and carrying the weight. For New Zealand, not directly. Like we've gone on hikes the last couple weekends. Andre's been snowboarding the last few weekends, so definitely getting some exercise. But I think because all the hikes are quite moderate for New Zealand, we're just hoping for the best, and it should be okay. Yeah, they're pretty like minimal elevation gain, so I think we should be fine.
I think in general we keep pretty active, so we're always in somewhat good shape.
Decent shape. Yeah.
yeah, and it was for me the elevation gain would be my biggest concern is just the lack of oxygen. There's not much going on up here already. If you starve out of oxygen, right? Just saying.
And tell us about your epic trips or epic hikes through Brazil.
Sure. So I think this is a good story in general because it touches on a lot of the things we talked about today. So I'm Brazilian originally, right? So my family's all there, and I often go to Brazil for Christmas time to spend some time with my family. So again, we're talking about taking opportunities when you're already in a place to do some hiking, do some exploring. So I was trying to figure out something to do on a trip, and my parents were actually very outdoorsy people as well. So I got brought up into it. And my mom had already taken me to this place called Chapada Diamantina, which is a place in the interior of Brazil, close to Salvador, which is one of the older, more culturally rich cities in Brazil. And she told me about this great hike that they have there. It's called the Pachi Valley. And it's this hike that takes you, it's a through hike that takes you through this huge valley in the middle of nowhere, right? It's just absolutely stunning. And you walk through this valley and end up on the other side, and then you can take a bus to either end of the hike. So I decided to go on this hike. I didn't do too much prep into it, admittedly, and I planned some things out. And I think this is a good example of a lot of times, you know, especially in today's age with the internet and social media and all these kinds of things, it feels like there's less and less places that are truly unexplored or remote, right? Everything is on the internet. Anyone can look up anything and, you know, find out about it. So I think this is an example of things that are there's still a lot out there that is unexplored and remote. It just takes a little bit more work and going a little bit outside of the typical path that people take, right? So for this trip, I had to talk to my mom, who had been there already, and she referred me to some friends of hers who actually live near the destination, right? So they helped me organize things because these places that are, you know, less known, less touristy, they don't have the infrastructure to get you there, to get you around, to shepherd you around, right?
Carry your bags.
Yeah. So what I had to do was take a bus 7 hours into the interior, right, middle of nowhere, and then actually had to coordinate to get off the bus in the middle of the road and be picked up by a taxi, which is really just a friend of a friend type of thing, to pick me up and bring me to the city where I would start the hike. Of course, speaking the local language really helped here. Having connections really helped here. But it's an example of, you know, if you're gonna do these things, right, to really get off the beaten track, you got to be willing to put in the work, and it's going to take a little bit more effort. So I get to the start of the hike, which is in a city called Andaraí. And there I stayed with my mom's friend who actually owned a little hotel there. So I was able to talk to him. And he was a great resource because he was actually not only a hotel owner, but he did kind of wilderness tours and survival courses there as well. So he gave me a lay of the land, explained how things worked a little bit. And the way this valley works is it's this protected national park that got turned into a national park not too long ago. And there's actually some people who used to live there, and they were allowed to stay on the land. And now that when people go and hike, they actually stay with these different families in kind of a homestay hostel situation. So you don't actually have to camp, which is nice. You can stay in a nice bed and have people cook food for you. And in return, you support these people and allow them to keep living there in this valley, which they've done for generations. It's pretty cool. So he gave me the lay of the land, right? Usually people go in with a tour guide, but he said, you know, being the adventure guy that he is, said, you don't need a tour guide, you'll be fine. So he gave
Famous last words.
Yeah. So it's funny in these days.
Feel like a setup here.
Yeah. It's funny in these days when we do a lot of our hike planning, there's so much technology out there, right? With offline maps and alt trails and different ways you can actually track your hike with your phone, and you never need a physical map or anything. This was earlier on, and we didn't really know about these types of resources or tools. I went in with a physical map, a GPS device, right, to find myself on the map.
Yep.
And just did it old school style. Just went
GPS
into
is
it.
still not old school. If you had like a compass,
I was good.
and
So
you're-
just saying, yeah, it's not old school, but good. You're
It's old
in
school enough. It feels old school these days.
a flag to measure the wind direction. Let's hope for that.
So I went in, and that's all I really knew, right? Is the places I would stay, the kind of homestays, and the map that I would walk through. But looking yourself on, like looking it up on a map and then being there in real life is very different. So I pack my bag, roll in, and I kind of hike up the one side of this valley, and I hike to the very top of one of the walls. And from the top, I just kind of came onto this beautiful view of just this lush green valley just stretching out forever. And there's huge walls on either side. And it's so picturesque, right? Just picture the most greenish things you've ever seen, with just framed by these huge walls on either side. And I just kind of took it all in. I was awestruck, right? This is absolutely beautiful. I can't believe I'm here. I'm all alone. I maybe saw like 3 people heading the opposite direction. And then I look down and go to head down into the valley, and a snake just slithers right in front of me. And then it hits me. I am all alone in this vast valley, and I have no idea what kind of dangers are lurking in here.
Snake bites and stuff would be bad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not in the first aid kit.
No, definitely not. And I don't have a way to call. We didn't have a GPS phone or anything at this time, right? So I hesitantly make my way down and end up getting to the homestay. And when I got there, I met the guy who had lived there his whole life, this senior man, but you could tell this guy is just rugged and tough, just live off the land his whole life, right? And I asked him about it, said, hey, you know, I saw a snake, kind of looked brownish, this color. Do you think it was venomous or anything? He said, no, that one was probably okay. But you should watch out for this snake and these spiders that like to hide here, and the scorpions that like to go into your boot at night. And definitely don't go walking around at night, because that's when the jaguars come out.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely wasn't prepared for all that. That's usually something you'd want to know going into something like that. So that was definitely eye-opening, right? And realizing, hey, I'm all alone in this hike, and there's definitely other people around hiking with tour guides and things like that, but not everywhere. So definitely brought the reality of the situation to me in that moment.
And you got sunburned.
A little bit. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure sunburn's way down the list. Like
Yeah, at that point.
scorpions, snakes,
Jaguars.
spiders, jaguars. Yeah, no, I can deal with sunburn.
Mm-hmm. But I push on, right? So I stay there, and the next day I move on to the next homestay. And this is where I actually got kind of lost, because picture this valley with tons of little settlements, right, where all these different families built their home. And over the years, they've just created this trail network that they all know, but not all of it's on the map, right? Because they just put the main ones on the map. So I got distracted, went into the wrong one, but did end up finding myself via the GPS and the map, got oriented again and got to my destination, which was nice. And that afternoon, I had some extra time, so I did a day hike up to the top of this mountain that sits in the middle of the actual valley. So it's really cool. It's kind of a double peaked mountain that's right in the middle of the valley, called the Castle Mountain. And you can actually hike up to the top of one of them. And this was a really cool spot. Again, I knew very little about any of this, right? So people just told me, hey, go up to this place. So I went, and I get near the top, and it actually leads into a cave. And in the cave, you have there's a fork, you can go in two different directions. So to the right, you kind of go down, and you end up in this window where you can view the entire valley to the back of where I came in from. And then going to the left, you go through the cave again, and you come out on this other side, and then you scramble up a bit more, some rocks, and you end up on this beautiful viewpoint at the top, where again, you can just see the entire valley, and you're just right in the middle of it. And it's this beautiful, again, expansive view of this lush green valley forever. So that was pretty cool. And I was there all by myself because it was later in the afternoon and everyone else had headed down. And it was just amazing to have this place all to yourself.
And the pumas.
Yeah.
Me and the pumas.
So the next day, I actually met some people at the homestay who had a guide, and I joined in with them to go to this waterfall. And that was very lucky that I had a guide because, again, there were so many trails in different directions that weren't trails or were and went in a different place. So I was lucky I had someone to go with and bring me to the right place. And there was this beautiful waterfall just falling down, just hundreds of meters down into the valley floor. And there's a rock that kind of juts out that you can go out and very sketchily take a picture on. And there's a picture of me there, and I'm on this rock, but you can tell all my weight is just on my back foot because I'm just so scared.
Staying back from the edge. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And there's people, doing jumps and leaning on the edge, and that's just a little crazy for me.
No.
And then and then I stay another night at the homestay, and on the last day I hike out to the other end of the valley, so it was a through hike. And that was the day I got really sunburned because I was just in the middle of this valley where it comes out of the trees, and I was just exposed to the sun the entire day. I actually ended up having to wrap myself in a towel and everything to get out of there, and I did get a bit sunburned. But at the end, you end up on this small little city called Capon, which has become kind of a hippie community. So lots of cool artwork and vegetarian food, live music. So it was a very good way to unwind after a long hike.
You picked the right direction to go in. It'd be
Exactly.
awful if you started there and then you wound up in nothing.
Yeah.
Side of the road.
So yeah, that was the hike in Brazil. It was a
That's
cool
awesome.
experience. It's interesting to see how you can still find these really remote and unexplored places.
That's cool. Wow. Yeah, and it must be a little bit strange to be like in the trees and stuff and not really realize that you're in the trees and stuff and then come out. I can totally understand how you'd end up sunburnt. What a trip, man. Yeah, and I would be doing the back foot thing. I actually probably wouldn't go out. I'd just be hugging the wall, looking from as far as away as I can from the edge because I'm a chicken.